Welcome back to Powered by Her. I'm Tiffany Anton from the Biz Foundry, and I have Simone McKelvey in today. I don't know why that's such a hard thing for me to say. With City Girl Soaps. Welcome to the Powered by Her set. I'm excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here. This is cool. I love your set.
It's a good time. And so tell me what City Girl Soaps is.
So City Girl Soaps is my naturally scented soap business and also personal care products where I use only essential oils, herbs, and spices to fragrance and color everything. And the city is because I'm originally from New York City.
And which is interesting here because this is not city.
Not at all. So I've kind of gone country.
Yeah.
I mean, I was born and raised in the Bronx. And so when I tell people that I make soap now, it's sort of funny because, I grew up in a 16-story high-rise building. I lived on the 7th floor. I was raised my entire life until going to college in New York City. So to now live in a rural place and then to be making soap is kind of funny.
And rural Tennessee too. It's not like I grew up in Michigan and there's some rural areas of Michigan, but rural Tennessee is different.
It's very different. Now I had a stop in Virginia in between. So that it wasn't such a shock to the system.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's very different than where I grew up.
So growing up, were you more into natural kind of, I wouldn't think that a girl in the Bronx was worried about, kind of just staying natural and essential oils kind of thing. It's kind of like,
no,
we're going to, buy whatever's on the corner store that, we're going to wash our hair with whatever, we wash our hair with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. Actually, the natural shift happened probably 7 or 8 years ago. And it was around the same time where I like making things. So I've always been a baker. I've liked learning how to do new things. I've been a creator. Yeah. That's right. And so it just sort of, the soaps and natural care products sort of just filled that desire already, where I already made stuff from scratch. Mm-hmm. And so it started out as I made it for a gift I made it as a gift for the person that I was seeing at the time. And so I laugh because although that didn't last,
the relationship didn't last.
Right.
But the business idea did.
Exactly. And so it started out as just a gift and then it ended up turning into something that it is now. And I've been making soap for about 7 years. So my business has been in existence since then, but I would say I've been more focused on growing it in the past maybe 3 years.
Why? What made you think I could do this as a business and not just, I'm going to make this for loved ones?
Because it's me. Like, what's funny is that I don't do anything halfway. And so instead of just saying, oh, it'll be a fun hobby, it's like, well, why don't you make this a business?
Yeah.
And so it's just my personality.
You just have that drive and that grit that I got to keep going and I got to do it.
And I just have an entrepreneurial spirit. And in my former profession, I was a high school Spanish teacher. And so when I was doing that, I had done sort of a stint of translation services. And so that was I had made up my little brochure and I was making that available to people who wanted it.
Was that your first jump into kind of having your own business and understanding pricing and getting clients and getting marketing material? Was that kind of the first thing?
I think that was the second thing. My first idea, which never got up off of the ground at all, was on offering mini fridges to college students and like renting them to them.
Yeah.
But I think I was, there were probably tons of other people who had that idea. And so because I didn't have a large variety or a large inventory, that never got up off of the ground.
I think it's really that the whole, like, there's so many things about college. There's some business, I think I listened to it on a podcast where this guy does laundry for people. For college kids, he goes and picks them up.
That's incredible.
And he started at one university and he's kind of moved around. And so it is interesting how you can start something at one university and move around. But so what do you think about growing up in New York City that kind of gave you that drive to, or about your upbringing, not necessarily New York City, but what was it that gives you that grit to just like go do it? And
yeah, I think my parents, my mother and father worked really hard, and it was never in my mind that I wouldn't go to college. Like that was just always a given. It wasn't necessarily that they even pushed me or my siblings in that direction, but it was just sort of, you knew that there were certain things you needed to do to be able to succeed. And not that everybody needs to go to college. And I work at a university, so I know people will want to slap my hand for saying that.
Yeah.
But I think that if you know what you want to do and that requires a university education, then you should absolutely go for it. I don't think anyone should deter you from doing that. If you know what you want to do and it doesn't require a university education, then you should go for that. And so for me, I'm
going to stop and say,
oh, yeah.
If you don't know what you want to do, you don't have to go to college. Because that's, I think, what 16, 17, 18-year-olds, that's kind of what society is. I think there's a shift a little bit now, and not to undermine working at the university, but I think it's just that, like, oh, well, that's just the next step, no matter what you're thinking. And if you don't know what you want to do at 18 years old, it's okay. And I think that it's hard sometimes because I think that that's not societal norms, is that it's okay not to know. So,
well, I think it's okay not to know, but I work with undecided students. So one of the things that I think, because I love my university, I really do. One of the things that I think is really important is that if you're undecided, that you take that journey of exploration and that you're talking to people and maybe you're job shadowing. And if you're at the university, then you're talking to your advisor and you're doing assessments so that you can figure out what you're good at and what the things are that you value, so that then you can then apply that to a major or a future career.
Yeah.
So I have to give kudos to where I work because I do enjoy it. And I think that is beneficial. But yes, that is true. You need to know what direction you're trying to go in so that it's not a waste of your time and money.
And then you get frustrated and it's a waste of time and money. And then you're like, now I'm 23 and I have debt and I don't have anything to show for it. So it's a difficult balance. I love to know that there's resources for undecided students out there. That's really beneficial. And I hope that we will see some changes in even the high school level to foster that. Because I think there's a little bit, I get on a soapbox about education sometimes. There's a little bit of like, okay, you have to pick a career path when you're in 8th grade and that's where you're supposed to go. And it's like, I used to be a high school teacher as well. And I'm not doing anything in the education realm right now. And I'm just as happy as I was when I was a high school teacher. Right. So I think that it's okay to kind of have a journey and a path.
Yeah. And I think it's okay for you to do career changes. And I think that's one thing that college students need to know too, is that you may get your degree in one area and then you decide, you know what, after 10 years, I'm going to make a shift. I mean, I did that. I was not in higher ed until probably 2007. Prior to that, I was first I was an elementary school teacher, then I was a middle school teacher, then I was a high school teacher. So I sort of did all of the stair steps.
That's such different types of students.
Oh yeah. I'm not an elementary school teacher.
So what made you just decide to pivot? And so your City Girl Soaps for you right now is what people would say is a side hustle.
Yes.
And I think that's all relative, whether it's a side. To me, that just means you have another job that pays the bills for the most part. And so what made you pivot to go into higher ed?
I got tired of being in the classroom, quite honestly. I mean, if you're a classroom teacher, you know that it's exhausting.
Could you imagine doing it right now this year, the pandemic?
No, not at all.
Nope.
Well, and then to top it off, it doesn't seem like it, but I'm an introvert. And so you learn how to do what you have to do as a classroom teacher because you're in front of people every day. So you learn how to fake it. But it's exhausting because you're giving, and, introverted people
to recharge your batteries.
Right, exactly. So I decided that it was time for a shift, and I still wanted to do something with Spanish, but I didn't necessarily want to do it in front of a classroom. And so I shifted to higher ed, and I was their bilingual education support specialist. So I worked with Spanish speakers and other international students at the higher ed level at a community college. And it was actually at the beginning a 30-hour per week position. So I wasn't full-time initially. And then I shifted to a full-time academic advising position at the same community college. And so I stayed there for a couple of years. And then after that, I was hired at a 4-year university to be their advising. I was their advising professional. So I did professional development. So I got to use the knowledge that I had from teaching to apply that to faculty advisors and giving them professional development, and then making sure that our advising system was working really well and students were getting what they needed. So it was kind of a combination of what I had done before in this new area of advisement. And so I did that for almost a decade. And then I guess 2.5 years ago, I had this opportunity to come to Tennessee Tech as their director of advisement and retention services. And so now I look at not only how advising is going, but what can we do to keep our students? And why do we lose them when we lose them? Are there things we could have done differently? And so looking at that background data and talking to students and all of that. And then I've had a recent shift where there's a brand new first year advising center that opened on our campus that I'm in, and I'm the director of that as well.
How do you think that having a day job affects your business a bit?
It's exhausting. One of the things that I have to, and I've said this to people when I've talked about having a small business as well as having a day job, is that you have to give yourself room to rest, because a lot of times you're burning the candle at both ends and then sometimes in the middle. And there are times where I'm like, okay, I can't do this. I have to say no to this, even though I think it's a great opportunity. Lately, I feel like I've been saying yes to a lot of things, and sometimes you have the space to do that. But
and when you're growing your own business, there is no one there but you. And so it's a lot of pressure on you. And so every opportunity is like, well, what if this is the opportunity that's going to make a difference? And so that weight on an entrepreneur is just extremely heavy. And so that in itself, and I find it interesting. I think there's really two types of entrepreneurs. I think that there's kind of the serial entrepreneur that just loves the having their own business, doing their, and I think that's kind of you. And I think that there's some people that are just really passionate about this one thing. I'm really passionate about, helping people with their, knee replacements. And so either one, people come into entrepreneurship in different ways. And I think it's really interesting. And you being the serial entrepreneur and just wanting to grow a business and kind of figuring out which one fits you and your lifestyle, but then also having a career, and you've built a career along this journey too.
Yeah. And I haven't always done it well. Like, one of the things that I regret is I started my business when I still lived in Virginia, and I was in the southwestern part of Virginia. I worked in Lexington, and I lived in the town next door called Buena Vista. It took me 6 months to say it the way that the locals do, but so
it's like Lebanon.
That's right. So when I started the soap business, I had a lot of local customers because I did farmers markets, and I still do that here, and festivals. And when I moved initially to Tennessee, I did not do a good job of like continuity and saying, hey, everybody who used to frequent my farmers markets table in Lexington, I'm moving now. And so that's sort of been a learning experience.
You also had to rebuild your brand and your
absolutely.
Yeah, that's hard. And in the day and age that we're in, you don't necessarily have to lose customers. You can, I mean, the 2020 has shown us that you can do most everything in your career online.
Right.
But it takes some forethought and planning to say, okay, how am I gonna retain these customers? And then adding that element of shipping to people that you might not have shipped to people before, and all that kind of stuff.
And I think if I were to, and I'm not planning on moving right now, but if I were to move again, I think I would do it a lot better, because now I have those things in place. I already had a website, but it wasn't that people were really using it very much. Now that has seen an uptick, and that's exciting. And so it will be a lot easier now if I were to shift locations for people to still reach me and get to me, and for them to recognize me. I was not big on social media back then either. And I'm not great at it, but I'm better at it. So, I have Facebook and I have Instagram, and I'm not quite on Twitter yet, or some of the others.
So speaking of social media and a website, and you've had this business for about 7 years, the things have changed a lot, and
Yes.
you've had to grow your knowledge base, I'm sure, of not necessarily knowing how to run or build a website 7 years ago, and things are, technology has just changed.
Yes.
So where do you get the support or the knowledge to figure out kind of all those, how to market, on social media?
Well, I mean, Google, you can learn anything on YouTube.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I actually learned how to make soap originally by looking at a YouTube video and from some encouragement that I got from a former supervisor when I was at VMI. And so that is neat. I think that's one thing that we have that benefits us, is that you can basically do a search for almost anything and find tutorial videos, asking people, having conversations.
I think I
Yeah.
sometimes stop to think, how did people build a business 20 years ago? There was no Google.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, my kids will even more so not understand the world without technology. I mean,
Right.
I at least understand what dial-up internet was, but I'm just like, it just blows my mind sometimes to think about those things.
And the approach has to change. Like the businesses, I think, that thrive and that are generational, where they continue to grow, grandpa did it and then dad did it and then now grandson does it, is they have to be adjusting to the time that they're in and figuring out, okay, what does my approach have to be now?
Especially, I mean, I kind of mentioned 2020, especially in 2020.
Right.
That's what entrepreneurs have. I feel like that the biggest takeaway is like, if you don't pivot, you're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got to kind of change with the times. And no one ever would have ever thought a pandemic would have happened or affected the world the way it did. But I think it was such a, I'm probably alone in this, but I think it was a great opportunity to learn, like, okay, well, what's important in your life? What's not important? What's important in my business? How can I reach people in a different way? It was such a growing opportunity for people.
Right. And then not making the business the main thing. And I know that seems counterintuitive because it's important to me.
Yeah.
I want it to grow. I want City Girl Soaps to be something that is like a household name in a number of years. And I don't know what that number is yet. But at the same time, making sure that I was taking care of myself and, taking care of the people who are important in my life, especially during the pandemic, when you're trying to keep everybody healthy and everyone has a different approach to doing that. And some people maybe have a less enthusiastic approach to just the, I guess, guidelines or whatever you want to call it, but just, I don't know where I was going with that, but anyway.
It was, I mean, I think it has been an interesting year of just trying to figure out kind of, and I think too, you've seen other areas of the country. And so even just that, my family's in Michigan, and the way that Michigan handled a pandemic as opposed to Tennessee has been very different and very interesting to do. I want to mention that we had a diversity panel that you were on, and we talked about you being a Black business owner and kind of the effects of that on your business. And let's touch on that. Like, what do you think that, how does that affect your business?
It's so funny because this topic has been sort of in the forefront of my mind lately. At work, it has been, in society, because of the yuck stuff that we've seen happen, which is not new, but unfortunately, I guess more visible, or we notice it more when things are not just that happen. So I'd say that when I interact face to face with a customer at a table, that I have not had any bad experiences. Now, I don't know what anybody's thinking of, well, why is this Black girl making soap? I don't know whether or not
it's kind of a country thing, right?
Yes,
making
right. But it's, I think one of the things that we all need to be realizing is that there's so many things that we have in common. I love making stuff, and whether that's cookies that I really shouldn't be eating, or, a cheesecake that I made for the first time a few weeks ago, or whatever, like there are things that we all have in common, and we need to be seeing that. So yes, it's maybe a little odd for you to see an African-American woman who's making soap, but if you probably go back in the day, I can probably find somebody in my family who made soap back in the day.
And one of the things during that diversity call that you mentioned is that your family, your sisters kind of called you the white black girl, right?
Yes.
Of like, you were too white for your family, but you know,
right.
in some culture, you know, communities, situations, you're not black enough for, you know, so you've had some kind of exploration, I guess, trying to figure out where your place is.
Right. And I think the older I get, the more I appreciate just accepting
Who
Simone.
you are. Yeah.
That's right. And, you know, I don't talk like a lot of Black people think I should talk. And I don't talk like a lot of white people assume I'm going to speak.
You don't talk like a real country girl.
Exactly. And I don't even still have my New York accent that I had before, except for certain words. So, and I don't know why that is, other than the foreign language background and that I sort of tune my ear and speech to where I'm at.
Sometimes I'm hoping I get rid of my Michigan accent.
Right. But what's so funny is that my younger sister has more of a New York accent than I did, and she lived less time in New York than I did. So I don't know what it is. I think it's just that I'm unique. And
you're Simone.
That's okay.
Yeah.
And there are sometimes I think all of us struggle with just who we are, and like, maybe I should be more like such and such. Or, I
think that's a woman thing in general. Like women are always going to think they should be more of like her or her, or, right. You know, we're our own worst critic. And so I think I like the fact that you said, as you've gotten older, you kind of just leaned to this is who I am. And I think that's, I try and do that in my own life of like, okay, let's just embrace this is me, and I'm not going to be any different. I'm 38 years old and this is it. Yeah.
And then the other thing too that has been a help to me, so I'm a Christian. I became a Christian when I was 19, and having that relationship with Jesus has really made it so that I'm like, you know what, you made me a certain way, and there are good things that you put on the inside of me that are very different than the people that are around me. And I don't want to squelch that. Like God puts unique, really special, cool things in each of us, and we need to embrace that. So, it's, I think age has put a polish on being able to be a little bit more self-accepting.
Yeah. So in the last 7 years with City Girl Soaps, you've kind of, I'm sure there's been ebbs and flows and mountains and valleys. Anytime that you've thought, this is a lot, this is draining on me, and it's taken away from, you know, really raising your career up. Thoughts that you thought maybe I should just shut this down? And
only briefly. I mean, my thought was, Simone, why did you have to make it a business? Why didn't you just stick with it being a hobby that maybe sometimes you did at, you know, festivals? Well, because I'm Simone, and because
it's that special little thing that God put in you.
Exactly. Because I want it to grow and I want it to be huge, and I'm thinking long term, and because I like options, you know, when I was a classroom teacher, the good thing was that I had the skill of being able to speak Spanish and be bilingual. And so that opened up another opportunity for me when I didn't want to be in the classroom anymore. And in the same way with my business, because I'm an entrepreneur at heart, if at some point I decide that I want to move beyond higher ed, or that I want sort of a not 50-50, but maybe now 60% of my time is spent with the soap making business, that I would be able to do that. And I just like the opportunities that this has opened up for me to have options where if I want to change my life on a dime, I could.
Yeah.
So that's been kind of exciting. My mother jokes and she says, "You're a gypsy like your grandma," you know, because I've talked about, well, you know, it's not that I'm not fly by night. I'm not flighty. I'm not flaky in the things that I do, but I can adjust and make changes. And so I lived for 9 years in Southwest Virginia, not West Virginia, but the southwestern part of Virginia. And I was there for almost a decade, so 9 years. And then I made a shift. And, you know, some people would say, well, once you buy a home, that means that you're going to stay in the area that you're in. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. It means that a home can be sold.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it
It means I'm not paying rent to somebody else.
right, and it's just my personality is that I think that options are always good and that you should never box yourself in
Yeah.
to being one thing.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. I had said with a guest earlier about building the life that you want. And so building whatever that looks like, raising your career up, raising your business up, and just building it to where you want it to be. So you started with soaps, and you mentioned maybe that you're doing some other products now too. So why did that come about?
Usually it was because of a customer. Someone said that they were looking for something or I saw a need. So we're in the pandemic. I said, you know what? Some of those hand sanitizers really smell yucky.
I feel like I'm drinking alcohol. Like I feel like I could get drunk on smelling.
I tell you.
Yeah, it's horrible.
So I actually made a sanitizing spray, and that actually, the name for that actually came from another customer who's in Virginia, Nikia. She actually buys my products for her hair salon, which is called Eubora. And I may be messing up the pronunciation, but I originally called it hand sanitizer. And she's like, Simone, that's sanitizing spray. She's like, I use it on doorknobs. I use it on everything. And I was like, you know what? That's right.
Yeah.
And the first ingredient is vodka. So I thought, people can use this. They're going to sanitize the surface or their hands. Yeah. And it doesn't smell yuck like some of the other products have, and it doesn't have that sticky sensation that some of them do. And so that's been one thing. Bath bombs is another thing that I've started making.
Like bath bombs just came out of nowhere in the last year.
That's right. And then I realized this is actually one of them. I don't make these, but there is a bath bomb now that has a ring in it. And this is one of those rings. Wow. And someone gave it to me and I was like, oh, that's so cute. But I just make regular bath bombs, but again, fragrance with essential oils. And then another thing that I did recently was beard oil. And this actually came out of another local business owner who owns Cultured Image Grooming Studio, Terrence Page.
Which was from the diversity call.
That's how I met Terrence.
Yes.
Terrence is awesome. And his business where he is looking at grooming the whole guy. So he's not just a barber, but he's looking at all of their skin. And his idea was to come up with a beard oil. Now he is going to produce that himself, but it gave me an idea and I started working on it before I realized he was going to just go ahead and do it himself. And so I was like, well, let me try this and let me try that. And so that's been kind of exciting to dip my toe in that a little. And
I would guess that most of your clients or your customer base right now is female. And so that kind of gives you a whole different realm of potential customers.
But I'll tell you also, I've noticed that at the farmer's market that there are guys coming to the table. And when they walk up with their wives or their girlfriend or whomever they're with, I encourage them to smell some of the fragrances that would be appealing to them too. Like there's one called Stolen, which I modeled after the oil blend Thieves. And that's why I call it Stolen, because it's the same herbs and spices, but I make that recipe. And so when I see a guy come to the table, I'll say, smell that, because it's a spicy kind of blend and it's something that they really enjoy. And I want them to know that City Girl Soaps is not just for girls. It's not just for women. It's for anybody who cares about what they're putting on their skin. Yeah,
that natural elements to it. So where do you see this going in the next 5-10 years? What's next for City Girl Soaps?
Well, I want to definitely expand on the classes that I'm offering. So for the first time since I've moved, I'm offering a soap making class this Saturday. And I'm offering it from 2 to 4 over at the Walnut Street Market, which is also Cookeville locally grown. And so I've had a few people sign up for that. So I'm super excited just to kind of teach them about soap making 101. What are the do's and don'ts? What are safety precautions that you want to take? Because anytime you're putting things together and there's going to be a chemical change, you have to have some safety precautions. So we'll be wearing masks and we'll have goggles and all of the things that we need. but I want to expand on the educational opportunities that City Girl Soaps offers.
So you're kind of bringing both worlds together,
Exactly.
the education world with your soaps, and that's awesome. That's great.
And then I'm always learning, and I think that that's what we need to be. We need to always be learning. So I'm listening. I enjoy audiobooks anyway, but I'm listening to an audiobook on essential oils because I use that as my way to scent all of my soaps and other products, and just learning about the health and therapeutic benefits of using essential oils just in your everyday life. And so I'm excited about just learning new things. And I've been making soaps with essential oils for 7 years, but I've learned new things in listening to this audiobook. So
that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. And how you can take that to your customers.
Right.
And maybe we'll see you doing City Girl Soaps full time, not to put anything out, speak anything into existence, but.
Well, I'll tell you that I'll say this, in 4 or 5 years, I would love to have the option to do that. Now, whether or not I do it, we'll see.
Yeah.
But I want that to be something that I could choose to do in the next handful of years.
That's awesome. So how can people find you if they want to find City Girl Soaps, order from you, find you, smell your products? How can they find you?
So 24/7, you can find me at citygirlsoaps.com, and you can order any place in the continental or non-continental United States. I will ship there. If you want to pick up local, you can order online and then select local pickup, because I set up at 2 different local farmers markets. I'm at the downtown Green Market on the corner of Dixie and Broad. I'm also at Cookeville Locally Grown, or the Walnut Street Market, which is just up the street from Bros.
Yep.
So I do both markets once a month, and then again 24/7 if you want to order online.
Do you have social media that people can kind of see what your products look like?
Yes, I'm at City Girl Soaps.
At City Girl Soaps.
Thank you. At City Girl Soaps
on
Instagram. And then also I have a Facebook page where they can just do a search for me.
For City Girl Soaps or Simone?
You know what? Both.
Okay.
They can find me if they just search Simone McKelvey, and it's McKelvey, or they can do a search for citygirlsoaps.com, and I have a page for that as well that's linked to my personal account.
Great. Go check out citygirlsoaps.com. Come see Simone, smell her awesome smelling soaps. Thank you so much for coming in today. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Hear your journey. Well, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and you can find the next Powered by Her episode coming out soon.